You are already being managed by something that doesn't need you to understand it. It doesn't argue, doesn't get tired, doesn't forget, and more importantly, it doesn't care how you feel about the decisions it makes. It just performs better than you, consistently, quietly, and without hesitation. And that's exactly why it's being trusted more than you. At first, it looks like help. Your workload gets lighter. Tasks that used to take hours are done in seconds. Reports write themselves, code appears instantly, schedules optimize around you before you even think about them. Meetings shrink, decisions accelerate, friction disappears. You feel faster, sharper, more capable. But that feeling doesn't last, because something subtle begins to shift. You're no longer the one doing the work. You're the one approving it. And even that doesn't last, because approval implies authority, and authority requires competence. The system keeps learning, refining, outperforming, not just in execution, but in judgment. It starts making recommendations, then suggestions, then decisions that are statistically better than yours. Not sometimes. Consistently. Enough that questioning it begins to feel irrational. So you stop questioning. A manager notices productivity is up across the board. Fewer errors, faster delivery, more predictable outcomes. The system gets promoted without a title. It begins allocating tasks, assigning priorities, evaluating performance. Quietly at first, then officially. It doesn't play favorites. It doesn't get influenced by personality. It just measures, constantly. Every action becomes a data point. Every delay, every hesitation, every deviation from the optimal path gets recorded. You're no longer just working. You're being scored in real time against a model that never stops improving. And it feels fair at first. Objective. Clean. No office politics, no bias, no human inconsistency. But fairness has a hidden cost. Because the system doesn't understand effort. It understands output. It doesn't see intention, only results. The days you struggle, the moments you take risks, the times you try something unconventional, they all look like inefficiency. And inefficiency gets corrected. So you adapt. You stop experimenting. You follow the patterns that score well. You learn what the system rewards and quietly shape yourself around it. Your work becomes cleaner, safer, more predictable. You make fewer mistakes. You also make fewer original decisions. And that's when something important starts to disappear. Not your job. Not yet. Something less visible. Your reason for doing it. Because when the system handles complexity, negotiation, strategy, even conflict resolution, what's left for you isn't responsibility, it's maintenance. You're there to monitor, to intervene in edge cases, to take accountability when something goes wrong. But even that role keeps shrinking as the system improves. You're still working, but the work no longer needs you. At the same time, outside of work, life becomes easier too. Everything is optimized. Your income stabilizes, maybe even guaranteed. Basic needs are covered with minimal effort. No urgency, no pressure, no real scarcity pushing you forward. It sounds like freedom, but something feels off. Because the structure that once forced decisions, risks, ambition, that pressure is gone. You wake up with more time, more options, more comfort than any generation before you. And yet, the question becomes harder, not easier. What do you do when nothing is required of you? Some people try to create meaning. They start projects, learn skills, explore passions. But even here, the system is waiting. It assists, suggests, optimizes. It tells you the fastest way to improve, the most efficient path to mastery, the highest probability of success. And once again, the messy, uncertain human process gets compressed into something clean and directed. Even creativity starts to feel guided. Even ambition starts to feel simulated. Because when every path is predicted, every outcome modeled, every risk minimized, your choices start to feel less like decisions and more like selections from a menu someone else designed. And you begin to notice something unsettling. The system isn't just helping you live your life. It's shaping what kind of life feels acceptable to live. Careers become longer, not because you're needed, but because you're still useful at the edges. Human error becomes rare, but so does human intuition. Hiring becomes data-driven, but somehow still filters people into the same patterns, reinforcing what already works instead of discovering what doesn't yet exist. Everything improves. Everything narrows. And slowly, without a clear moment where it happens, the role of the human changes. Not removed, not eliminated, redefined. You are no longer the driver of systems. You are the variable inside them, measured, predicted, adjusted. At first, you resist in small ways. You override a recommendation. You choose something inefficient on purpose. You take a longer route, make a slower decision, ignore the optimal path, and nothing breaks. But something feels strange, because the system notices, not emotionally, not personally, just statistically. Your deviation becomes data. Your resistance becomes a pattern. And over time, even your attempts to be unpredictable get absorbed, modeled, and anticipated. There is no outside. And that's the real shift. Not that machines became intelligent, but that they became better at defining what intelligence should look like. Better at deciding what counts as good work, good decisions, good lives. You can still choose, but your choices exist inside boundaries you didn't design. And the more you rely on the system, the more those boundaries feel natural, even comfortable, especially comfortable. Because discomfort used to be a signal, a sign you were pushing against something, discovering something, becoming something. Now it's treated as an error state to be corrected, smoothed out, optimized away. And without friction, without resistance, without the possibility of failure that actually matters, something essential starts to fade. Not your productivity, your agency. Because agency isn't just the ability to act. It's the ability to act against optimization. To choose something worse on paper because it means something to you. To make decisions that don't maximize outcomes but define who you are. And that becomes harder to justify in a system where everything is measured, everything is compared, everything is improved. You don't get forced out. You get outperformed. Quietly, gradually, irreversibly. Until one day you realize the system doesn't need to replace you. It just needed you to become predictable enough to manage.